Karen O'Malley walked into Judge Judy's courtroom wearing a fake designer suit and an even faker smile, thinking she was about to sell a vacation to the judge herself. But what she didn't know was that her glossy brochures, high-pressure pitch, and scripted charm had triggered an investigation weeks earlier. Judge Judy wasn't just prepared to rule on a case. She was ready to dismantle Karen's entire timeshare scam in front of millions. And the moment Karen handed Judy her exclusive VIP offer, her career officially ended. If you're ready for the takedown of a lifetime, hit like and subscribe now. Diana Morrison never imagined she'd end up in court. All she wanted was a quiet retirement, a few warm vacations, and maybe a memory or two with her grandchildren. But when Karen O'Malley showed up at her church seminar 3 months earlier, dressed like a corporate angel and speaking with the speed of a trained closer, Diana felt reassured. Karen spoke about legacy trips, lifetime value, and exclusive memberships that sounded too good to miss. So Diana did what thousands of others had done before her. She trusted the wrong woman. She handed over $12,000 of her savings for a premium travel membership package that promised resorts in Maui, cruise vouchers, and VIP airport pickup. But what she received was a plastic folder, 2 disconnected phone numbers, and silence. When she followed up, Karen brushed her off with excuses, processing delays, vendor renegotiations, and limited activation windows. Within 6 weeks, it was clear the vacation was a fantasy, and the only real destination was small claims court. But this wasn't just about Diana anymore. Judge Judy had read the file and recognized the blueprint of a predator. Karen wasn't some newbie making mistakes. She was a seasoned manipulator with over 24 complaints filed across 3 states, a pattern of targeting elderly clients, and a habit of disappearing the moment money changed hands. So when Diana sat on that courtroom bench, trembling but determined, she had no idea that Judge Judy had already prepared the trap, complete with documentation from licensing boards, whistleblower testimony, and a little surprise Karen would never see coming. This wasn't going to be a refund case. This was going to be a public unraveling. Karen O'Malley didn't walk into that courtroom like a defendant. She walked in like a keynote speaker at a sales convention. Her hair was pinned in a stiff corporate bun, her voice oozing artificial warmth, and in her hand, instead of a defense, she carried a laminated brochure labeled Luxury Living for Less, Timeshare Gold Elite. She didn't even glance at Diana Morrison. Instead, she gave a theatrical smile to the courtroom audience, the cameras, and finally, Judge Judy. From the very first moment, it was clear Karen wasn't just planning to defend herself. She was planning to convert the courtroom. When asked to give her opening statement, Karen pivoted. "Your Honor," she began with a rehearsed laugh, "I'd love to explain everything, but before I do, can I ask if you've ever wished for a getaway without the usual cost or stress?" The silence in the courtroom was thick. Even the bailiff blinked, unsure whether she was serious. Judy leaned forward, unamused. "Are you trying to sell me a vacation package, in the middle of your own fraud trial?" Karen chuckled, missing the gravity. "Not at all, Your Honor, I just think sometimes people misunderstand what we offer. It's not fraud. It's lifestyle elevation." She pulled out a brochure and began flipping through glossy photos of infinity pools and luxury suites, speaking like she was still at the hotel ballroom seminar. "Our members gain access to exclusive global destinations, curated travel experiences, and 5-star treatment, all for a fraction of the traditional cost." She turned directly to the camera. "And yes, even high-profile figures like yourself could benefit." Judy didn't blink. She didn't even look down at her notes. She simply folded her hands and asked, "Ms. O'Malley, are you aware that this courtroom has received 7 sworn statements from previous customers who claim you disappeared after taking their money?" Karen's smile faltered. "Your Honor, those are isolated misunderstandings. People don't always follow the correct redemption procedures." Judge Judy nodded once. "Is that why one of them claims you told her the resort burned down and then blocked her number?" Karen's eyes darted, her smile now visibly strained. "That was an exaggerated claim, Your Honor. I can assure you." Judy cut her off. "Sit down." Karen hesitated. "I said sit down." Karen sat, her posture stiff, her hands now visibly trembling as she placed the brochure back into her folder. Judy turned to Diana. "Ms. Morrison, when Ms. O'Malley made her pitch to you, did she mention a cancellation window?" Diana shook her head. "No, Your Honor. She said it was a 1-day exclusive offer. If I didn't sign then and there, the price would double." "And after you paid?" "She told me confirmation would come in 2 weeks. I never heard from her again." Judy nodded slowly, turning her icy stare back toward Karen. "Ms. O'Malley, you're not just a bad businesswoman. You're a professional predator with a power suit and a practiced grin. And the room went quiet. Judge Judy was no longer in courtroom mode. She was in hunter mode. And the predator sitting before her, Karen O'Malley, was still too arrogant to realize she had already been cornered. The courtroom was silent except for the faint shuffle of papers as Judy opened a new folder on her desk, one not listed in the official docket. Karen squinted, trying to get a glimpse of the contents, but Judge Judy didn't offer explanations. She offered consequences. Ms. O'Malley, she began, her voice low and precise, do you recall speaking at an event called the Sunview Retirement Expo 3 months ago? Karen blinked. Yes, Your Honor, I, gave a travel workshop there. Educational. Educational, Judy repeated flatly. And did you collect payments from any attendees at that workshop? Karen adjusted in her seat. There may have been a few early bird offers available to interested seniors. Totally optional, of course. Judy flipped the top page of the folder. Then can you explain why I have 8 affidavits here from elderly attendees who claim you pressured them to hand over checks immediately or risk losing their window of divine favor? Karen's face froze. The audience stirred. Judy wasn't reading headlines anymore. She was naming names. Mrs. Gladys Templeton. 82 years old. Terminal cancer. She paid $5,000 on the spot because you told her this would be her final blessing vacation. Karen opened her mouth to respond, but Judy cut her off with a single hand gesture. Sharp, dismissive, final. I'm not done. She turned the page again. Mr. Henry Cross, 77. Gave you $3,800 after you told him his grandchildren would get generational membership benefits. You told him Jesus himself blessed this offer. Karen shifted again, her composure cracking. Then Judge Judy lifted her eyes from the documents, locked her gaze on Karen, and delivered the blow. Would you like to hear your own words, Ms. O'Malley? Karen shook her head slightly. Your Honor, I'm not sure. The bailiff stepped forward and pressed a button on a small speaker beside the bench. A recording crackled to life, a shaky cell phone recording taken at the Sunview Expo. Karen's voice came through, too clear to deny. Don't wait. If you sign today, your name will be written into our Faith Advantage program. That means blessings, upgrades, and wealth transfer for your children. God opens doors for those who commit without hesitation. The courtroom gasped. Judy let the silence hang, heavier than any gavel. She pressed stop. Ms. O'Malley. You're not being accused of mishandling a single agreement. You're being accused of targeting the dying, the grieving, and the faithful with promises you never intended to keep. Karen's lip trembled. Your Honor, I never meant. Judy didn't flinch. Yes, you did. She reached beneath the bench and pulled out another file. This one had a yellow tab and a government seal. This, she said calmly, is a formal complaint filed against you with the Department of Consumer Affairs. Karen visibly stiffened. They allege you violated at least 4 state laws regarding misrepresentation in service contracts. You used false religious language to manipulate vulnerable people into financial decisions. And you told multiple clients that their money would be spiritually blessed. She closed the folder with a hard snap. And now you've come into my courtroom and tried to sell me the same lie? Karen didn't respond. She couldn't. Her eyes had lost focus, her breathing shallow, her mouth opening and closing without sound, like a swimmer realizing they've drifted too far from shore and the tide is pulling them under. Ms. Morrison, Judge Judy said, turning to Diana, I want you to know, this isn't just about getting your money back. It's about making sure she never does this again. Diana's hands trembled as she nodded. She hadn't expected justice. She had hoped for a refund. But now she saw the bigger picture, and the hundreds of other faces Karen might have targeted if no one stopped her. Judge Judy stood. I've presided over this bench for decades. I've seen thieves, manipulators, con artists, and liars, but you, Ms. O'Malley, are a category of cruelty I've rarely encountered. You didn't just take money. You weaponized hope. She paused. And hope is not yours to sell. The courtroom was so silent you could hear a cough from the back row. Karen finally spoke, a whisper, broken, the last gasp of arrogance turning into plea. I was just trying to help people believe in something. Judy didn't sit back down. Then believe in this. She nodded to the bailiff. Bring in the letter from the licensing board. Karen's head turned fast. What? The bailiff placed a sealed envelope into Judy's hands. She opened it slowly, like she had waited years to read these words. This letter confirms that your state sales license has been suspended effective immediately. You are no longer legally authorized to offer real estate, timeshare, or travel services in this jurisdiction. Karen went pale. Judy's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It carried the weight of 25 years of justice delivered with surgical precision. You will refund Diana Morrison in full. You will pay $1,500 in punitive damages. And you will never sell another dream under the disguise of salvation again. Do you understand me? Karen barely nodded, tears finally breaking through her frozen mask. Judge Judy sat. Then we're done here. Karen O'Malley wasn't just losing her case. She was losing control of her narrative, the one she had built for years with brochures, buzzwords, and predatory charm. Now, under the pressure of a judge who saw through every smile and every stall, her defenses were unraveling faster than she could breathe. Judge Judy leaned back in her chair, her gaze steady and lethal. Ms. O'Malley, let's return to your financial records. She lifted another document from the folder. According to your reported income, you cleared nearly $280,000 last year, entirely from sales of what you call faith-funded family escapes. Karen blinked. Yes, Your Honor. We run a boutique service for Christian families looking for luxury travel experiences. No, Judy corrected, her voice flat. You run a sophisticated emotional extortion racket dressed up as travel packages. And I'm about to prove it. Karen's throat clicked as she swallowed. Judy turned the page and read aloud, Client 014, single mother of 2. Sold $6,500 healing retreat, to Belize. Never received confirmation. No refund. Claimed customer, lacked faith in the process. She flipped again. Client 021, recently widowed. Purchased $9,000, grief recovery cruise. The ship she was promised? Never existed. Karen raised her hands, desperate now. Your Honor, we were experiencing some vendor transitions. I admit it got messy, but... You don't get to use words like messy, Judy snapped. Messy is a cluttered inbox. You stole people's hope and called it a vacation. You used God as a marketing strategy and guilt as a sales funnel. Karen flinched. It wasn't like that. I was trying to build something. You were trying to manipulate desperation, and now it's time we introduce someone who knows exactly how you did it. She turned toward the back of the courtroom and motioned. Bring in the witness. The door opened. In walked Daryl Jameson, late 30s, former employee of Karen O'Malley, wearing a plain blue shirt and carrying a laptop bag. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Karen froze. Mr. Jameson, Judy said, you worked as a sales associate under Ms. O'Malley's company? He nodded. 2 years, Your Honor. And why did you leave? He hesitated. Then clearly, because I couldn't do it anymore. We weren't helping people. We were harvesting regret. Targeting grieving, religious, or financially stressed families and using guilt tactics to close the sale. Karen tried to speak, but Judy raised her hand. You'll have your turn. Mr. Jameson, did you bring evidence? He nodded and opened his laptop. I have audio recordings, training documents, and email chains. The bailiff connected the laptop to the courtroom speaker system. A recording played. Karen's voice, close hard on the faith pitch. Make them feel like they're blocking God's blessing if they hesitate. Another clip. Widows are the easiest. They're emotionally raw, especially after the funeral. That's your window. Gasps erupted. Diana Morrison covered her mouth. Even the bailiff's jaw tightened. Karen stood abruptly. This is illegal. Those recordings were private company meetings. Judy raised her voice. They became evidence of fraud the moment you used them to scam vulnerable people. Karen's voice cracked. I never told anyone to lie. Judy slammed her gavel once. You didn't have to. You built the lie. You packaged it with sunsets and cross necklaces. And you handed it to the grieving like a gift, then sent them a bill. Silence. Karen sat down again, visibly shaking. Judy looked at Jameson. Do you have anything else to add? Yes, Your Honor. We used a tiered vulnerability chart. Based on personal tragedies. Widowed, divorced, bankrupt, or religious trauma. Each was assigned a color code. Red meant immediate close priority. A stunned murmur moved through the courtroom. Judy turned toward the camera crew. Cut the feed for broadcast delay. Red light blinked. The audience sat frozen. Because what I'm about to say, she continued, doesn't come from a judge. It comes from a human being who has sat across from every kind of fraud imaginable. She turned to Karen. You are not misunderstood. You are not misguided. You are not ambitious. You are dangerous. And you are finished. Karen whispered, please don't take everything. I have employees, rent, my daughter. Judy stood again. You should have thought of your daughter when you used someone else's grandmother to pay for her birthday trip. The final document was handed over. Judy opened it, the formal response from the state licensing board. She read it aloud. Effective immediately, Karen O'Malley's real estate and business sales licenses are revoked statewide. She is barred from operating any consumer-facing travel, real estate, or service-based entity for a period of no less than 10 years pending federal review. Karen buried her face in her hands. Diana Morrison finally allowed herself a breath. The judge wasn't finished. You're going to refund Ms. Morrison. You're going to pay $15,000 in punitive damages. You're going to notify all 72 customers on your active roster that your company is permanently shut down. And you're going to walk out of here with a reputation that will follow you longer than any sentence I could give. Then she sat down slowly, placed her hands on the bench and said, "This court is adjourned. And so is your scam." The gavel cracked. If you've ever wished scammers like Karen faced real justice, this is your moment. Comment the word exposed if you think Judge Judy did the right thing, and subscribe now for more courtroom takedowns that bring truth to light. The courtroom emptied slowly, as if the audience couldn't quite believe what they had just witnessed. Some still sat stunned, others whispering, their eyes shifting between Diana Morrison, who now looked like someone exhaling for the first time in a year, and the shattered shell of Karen O'Malley hunched over the defendant's table. Karen hadn't moved since the ruling. Her hands remained limp in her lap. Her shoulders, once square and performative, had collapsed inward. The designer jacket that once gave her the illusion of power now looked 2 sizes too big, like it had been loaned to a frightened child playing dress-up with authority. And Judge Judy? She sat still for a moment after the gavel, not reaching for her papers, not rising. Just watching. That rare stillness of a woman who had seen thousands come through her courtroom doors, liars, thieves, manipulators and victims, and still hadn't become numb to the damage they caused. In her silence you could feel something sacred. She wasn't gloating. She wasn't reveling in Karen's downfall. She was grieving the fact that a person could twist so much spiritual language into something so vile, and do it with a smile. "Ms. Morrison," Judy finally said, her voice softer now, "you've done more today than just reclaim your money. You helped stop something that would have hurt so many others." Diana nodded. "Thank you, Your Honor." Her voice cracked, not with fear this time, but with release. The kind that comes when someone finally gets the dignity of being believed. As she gathered her documents, the bailiff walked over to offer assistance. Diana didn't ask for help, but she accepted it. That alone told you everything you needed to know about how this case had worn her down. She didn't want revenge. She wanted rest. Karen still hadn't spoken. Her attorney had already slinked out of the room. Her briefcase remained open, with pamphlets and half-folded contracts spilling over the edge, cheap printed dreams now rendered useless. Then for a moment Karen looked up. Not at Judge Judy. Not at Diana. At the audience. And there it was, flickering through the tears and mascara, beyond the ruined reputation and revoked license. The faint glimmer of confusion. She didn't understand. Not fully. Because people like Karen rarely do. They understand how to use emotions but not how to feel them. They understand how to read a room for profit but not for pain. She thought she was clever. She thought the courtroom was a stage. She thought the brochures, the cruise pictures, the carefully calibrated faith talk, were her weapons. But Judge Judy had held up a mirror. And Karen, for the first time in her career, had been forced to look into it, and see the faces behind the signatures. The widows. The dying. The grieving. And for a brief, brutal second, it broke her. But only time would tell whether it would change her. Outside the courthouse, news crews were already gathering. A few had caught wind of what happened inside. A man with a microphone rushed forward asking Diana for comment. She gave a polite smile but said nothing. Her story had already been told, in full, in public and with finality. Behind her, the courthouse doors opened again. Karen stepped out. The crowd quieted. Not because they were in awe, but because it's rare to watch a person walk out of their own collapse. Her posture was no longer performative. It was just human. She didn't speak to the press. She didn't raise her voice or her head. She just walked down the steps, one hand holding her bag, the other pressing against her stomach like she was trying to keep from falling apart. She disappeared into a waiting car. No driver's name announced. No company logo. And no one followed. Inside the courtroom, Judy gathered her folders. She handed them to the bailiff without a word. But before she left the bench, she turned one last time to the camera crew, who had resumed filming for archival. "I want this episode aired in full," she said calmly. "No cuts. No spin. Let it serve as a reminder that even the smoothest scam falls apart when you shine truth directly in its face. The producer nodded silently. And with that, Judy left the bench. The last thing we see is the courtroom emptying. Slow, measured, real. Because justice, when it finally arrives, doesn't need music or graphics or sound bites. It just needs one honest woman to say, enough. And mean it. 3 weeks after the ruling, a quiet letter arrived at Diana Morrison's mailbox. It wasn't from a law office. It wasn't from Judge Judy's team. It was from another woman. Handwritten. Shaky cursive. Read. Dear Ms. Morrison, I saw your episode on television. I almost gave Karen my last $8,000 after she told me my healing depended on it. Your courage saved me. I just wanted you to know. Thank you. Diana cried for 20 minutes after reading it. Not because she felt powerful, but because she finally felt heard. Karen O'Malley never returned to the public eye. Her business was dissolved. Her website vanished. Her face, once airbrushed onto promotional banners and social media ads, became a warning in travel industry groups. A whisper in real estate offices. A red flag in databases. But for every brochure Karen had mailed out, someone still kept one in a drawer. For every widow she almost convinced, someone had watched the courtroom takedown and decided to say no, this time. Judge Judy never followed up with a speech. She didn't need to. Her ruling said everything. That truth, once exposed, doesn't need repetition. It needs echoes. And this one echoed. Because this wasn't just the story of one woman scamming another. It was the story of how trust can be stolen, disguised as opportunity. It was the story of how shame keeps victims quiet, until one voice speaks and others follow. It was the story of how justice, when done right, doesn't just punish the guilty. It protects the next victim from ever needing a gavel to be heard. And in the end, the biggest fraud in the room wasn't just the package Karen was selling. It was the belief that she'd never be caught. But she was. Not by police raids. Not by regulators. By a woman who had nothing left to lose, and chose to walk into a courtroom and say, I want my dignity back. And got it. If you believe justice still matters and stories like this deserve to be seen, comment, dignity restored below, hit subscribe and share this video with someone who still believes in truth.